Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. One of our mission statements is not to cover politics, especially around elections. So we're going to go with the company known as Colossal. You might have heard of it, you might not have. Colossal is engaged in the work of reconstructing, rebuilding, rebirthing, however you want to phrase it, extinct species. For example, they right now are working on bringing the woolly rhinoceros back and woolly mammoths. So that's a heck of a lot of work. Supposedly they're a not-for-profit, but the technology opens some interesting questions. A lot of interesting questions. Woolly mammoths and woolly rhinoceros and stuff like that had a large terrain that they survived on. They were probably pushed out of existence by climate change and, of course, by humans who, that's a big walking sack of meat for you to get. And we're bringing them back. But you could probably establish a few wild herds of them. I think there'd be possible to negotiate a treaty that nobody would touch them and see what happens. They're also thinking about bringing things back like the dodo bird. Now, dodo birds were not as stupid as people claim they were, and certainly not as they're displayed in a lot of cartoons. But the fact is, the dodo had a singular range, a couple islands that it was specialized for. I think specialized animals that are so specialized they can only exist in one particular environment are naturally disadvantaged compared to more generalists. The woolly mammoth survived for so long because it could eat almost anything it found in that frozen tundra. Whereas the dodo bird was looking for specific flowers and insects and stuff like that, it didn't know what to do. It was not conditioned to run away from predators because it was the apex predator of its area. And we found from plenty of other places, if you introduce a new apex predator like rats, wolves, dogs, humans, you displace a lot of these things. So I don't think the dodo bird would ever flourish in the wild again, unlike the woolly mammoth, which possibly could. Now these are all minor considerations. The technology being unlocked, to use a video game term, unlocking a new skill set, it does have a troubling legal aspect. What's to stop them from trying to take samples from your dead grandparents and bringing them back to life? And even if Colossus itself doesn't want to do it, there's plenty of people who would love to have that. There's plenty of people who want it done for themselves so they can experience a kind of biological immortality. And then let's just say you decide to bring your grandparents back. Well, where's their property? Where's their wealth? It's already been handed down. Maybe you got some of it, maybe you didn't. And I respect the human sentiment of love. Absolutely, there's very few days I don't miss my grandparents. I'm fortunate enough my parents are still around. But like I said, their estate was liquidated as per their wishes. So them coming back to life, they'd essentially be starting from nothing, and even assuming you can implant their memories in them because otherwise it's just another child that's going to grow up. Would they understand technology? My grandparents were no dummies. I'm sure your grandparents were no dummies. But they had a different world that they lived in. those cars that you had to wind up before you could start it before you got in. Um, Even cars in general were newfangled things. Radio. Oh yeah, let's go down and hear the show on a Saturday night. That sort of stuff was important to them. And just judging from the war babies and from the boomers, some still want their newspapers. Some still want, you know, the typical life of a dog outside, whatever it is. And if we pull one of these people into the present day, I I don't want to say that they're not going to thrive because who knows? Every single person has their own journey in life. But this is the technology tree we are unlocking, and it's got some very interesting branches off of it. Let's say you treat one of these rebirths, I don't know what to call it, reincarnations. Let's say you treat it like immigration. And in order to have your grandparent reborn, you have to sign a contract saying you're sponsoring them for 5, 10 years, and then, provided they don't, go berserk and do something crazy, they can regain their citizenship, their status, all that sort of thing. Rights. Does a clone count as a human, or does it count as, and I don't even want to call them a clone. Again, I want to call them a rebirth, even though it would technically be a clone, but you're cloning something that's already passed. What does this have to do for our understanding of the soul? Remember, it has not happened yet. But historically, we've made some pretty horrible choices with new technology and deciding, we'll figure out the ethics of it later. The machine gun, for example. The car, for example. Bombers, fighters, nuclear bombs. We'll figure out the ethics later. This is historically a bad idea, which is why it's important to start the conversation now. We don't have the ideas of the specifics, but we can at least relate it to our present reality and say we need to consider the thoughts and feelings of this reborn person. Again, assuming you can get the memories, because otherwise, okay, maybe that's how we can define it. A reborn is somebody who gets the memories transferred into them, whereas a clone, they're going to grow up as, you know, little Beatrice and little Stephen or whatever the heck that you have, and they're going to be subject to the modern educational system. They're not going to be the people that you know them. Well, you knew them. And it's hard to predict what would happen if you raised Napoleon in the modern day. If you somehow managed to rebirth him with his personality, he'd be lost. They had no aircraft of any kind. He was a master of artillery and movement, but would he understand combined arms operations? He would definitely have the intelligence to grasp it, but as we saw from World War I and World War II, it takes generals some time to come to grips with it. And I'm using war because finance is way trickier than war will ever be. So let's take Henry Ford, who was a good manufacturer and, had some pretty innovative ideas. That was over 100 years ago. What does he have to offer society today? And he might be stuck, might be very frustrated because he put all this into business and he doesn't understand any of it. I'm not a gearhead by any stretch of the imagination, but I can do an oil change on a car from the 90s or the early 2000s, no problem. I can do the oil, lube, and filter. I can do all that sort of stuff on it. You give me a car from 2010, I can no longer do it because the engine's changed over that time. So if I had passed away and been reborn in that period, what would my use be? And supposedly, it's all about economics. I would have to have one of my little girls sponsor me so that I could go get an education and try to find my own way in the modern world. And then we have entitlement. Again, let's look at Henry Ford. Maybe he wants his company back. Maybe he wants to be a writer, although I think we should highly discourage Mr. Ford from writing, given his history. Maybe he doesn't want anything to do except sit back in the Caymans and be around other rich people holding cocktail parties. Well, Mr. Ford, your family is more wealthy than when you left them, but money doesn't work the same. $1 is still a dollar, but a dollar to a person back in the 1920s was groceries for a week. Now you can't buy a candy bar for $1. And that impacts a lot of things. He might figure out he has a good deal, but he's buying stock in X. Right now that stock is down. So beyond animals and the ethical considerations of bringing them back, because there's no point to bringing them back to sit in a zoo. I think we can all agree that's not a productive use of resources. And like I said, there's some animals that we can bring them back from extinction. They might take root and do positive things. They might also do negative things. Reintroducing a big, heavy creature that eats a lot of vegetation into the subarctic area, that could do a lot of damage real quick. And the idea that this could eventually lead to technological breakthrough in humans. Now, I can see positives to this. I've just been pooping on it this entire time, but the positive is, somebody's liver goes, somebody's lung goes. There's a lot of parts of the body. If you could just clone that part and put it into somebody, you've got a medical miracle. Some people are going to complain about ethics. Oh, you have to grow a whole child. No, I'm thinking we're close enough now that we can grow an individual body part and use that to give a person a new lease on life. And I don't have a problem with that. When we start making a chimera, where we're designing people with 2 hearts, 2 livers, all making them basically a Gallifreyan, that's where we really need to start thinking. What is too much? Because an athlete with 2 hearts, assuming that you could stabilize them, would have impressive cardio. And 2 livers? Well, at least that would help people live longer. But there's a lot of questions coming up, and these are not questions for the far future. This is not an idle philosophical debate. Colossus is trying to make this happen today. I love the name too, Colossus. Anyways, with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. We always appreciate it. The bell button down below, if you click on that, you're going to be notified every time we upload a new episode, which usually is every day. A couple days we miss here and there, but that's just life. And we hope you have a fantastic day.